Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Parity Presents. For those that don't know, Parity is a gender equality network dedicated to driving inclusion in the boardroom, spotlighting women in leadership. We support women across different tech sectors, whether it's fintech, health tech, green tech, and AI. Feel free to go check our website. So feel free to scan the QR code below to go and learn more about our history, how to join, and any of our future events. Parity Presents is our virtual newsletter and will be once a month where I will have a female leadership and learn more about their experience. For October, this topic is about scary AI. And I couldn't find anyone as good for this topic other than the one and only Dr. Anna Demeo. For those who don't know Dr. Anna, she's a managing partner at Climate Tech Strategy Advisor. She graduated with an electric engineering degree in the 90s, just ahead of dot com boom, and the transformation of the telecommunications industry, where she got her start in the startup world. She has spent a lot of her career in the green tech space and is dedicated to supporting young people, especially empowering women through mentorship. She has multiple patents, started and led tech companies, served as president, CTO, and CPO, and now does strategic and tech advising for companies and investors in the climate tech space, specializing in AI driven technology at the intersection of the utility industry, mobility, and commercial and residential buildings. Please welcome Dr. Anna with me. Thank you so much for joining, Dr. Anna. How are you?
Good. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Mel.
Absolutely, yes. So I will let you introduce yourself for the Parity Network.
Great. Like I said, good to be here. My name is Anna Demeo, and I advise investors and companies in the climate tech space. My background, I started off as an electrical engineer in telecom in the 90s, as you mentioned in your nice intro.
Yeah.
And that's significant or interesting in that what was going on in telecom in the 90s and what's happening in energy today are very similar. You had regulated industry going through deregulation, you had disruptive business models, disruptive technologies. And so there's a lot of parallels there to pull from. When I got my start as an electrical engineer, moving into a startup right out of school, I definitely got the startup bug and went on to do several other startups, one in VoIP after my telecom stint, and then moved into energy, working with communities up and down the coast of Maine and overseas in Denmark and parts of Europe, doing community energy. And I did a PhD around, it was mechanical engineering, but it was really interdisciplinary. So smart grid technology, incremental capital investment, community engagement and policy. And that work, I developed revenue grade energy monitoring and load control premise for basically what we think of today as virtual power plant. So I started a company called Race Point Energy out of that. Grew that company up. It was acquired, did a stint as a chief technology officer, and then moved into vehicle to grid, where I led engineering, hardware, software, data science, as well as product, before moving into this advisory work, working with companies and investors, trying to sort out this wonderful and interesting space we're in.
Yeah. Awesome. And I know I've been reading a lot since our last conversation last week and it's just very fascinating how growth is happening within the climate tech space, as well as like how it can potentially reach 162 billion in the market by 2033. Who has been like your biggest inspiration to get into climate tech space from the start?
That's interesting. So you're right. Climate tech is huge. It hits every part of our life, right?
Mhm.
Mobility, the utility space. These are foundational industries to our way of life. The buildings we work in and the homes we live in. As we decarbonize and electrify, this idea of climate tech goes beyond early days. It was solar and wind, and really now it
Mhm.
really expands to hit every part of our lives. I really got my start. So I've been in obviously the tech space for a long time, the intersection of software and hardware for my whole career. But I started off working with island communities up and down the coast of Maine, and island
Mhm.
communities tend to be um, very vulnerable to fluctuations in weather, fluctuations in oil and fuel prices. And so,
Mhm.
and they also tend to be very do-it-yourselfer type people who live on islands. And so
Yeah.
working with island communities, helping them own some of their own energy future, it's very inspiring to me. I worked closely with Semsu Energy Academy on Samso Island, Denmark, who works with communities, island communities, indigenous
Mhm.
nation, all across the globe on community energy. And that's always been,
You did that yourself. Sorry.
did I?
Yes.
It's moving my hands. I'm Italian, so I speak with my hands. I'll put them down here.
No
Um,
worries.
but
Uh,
that's definitely been an inspiration for me.
no, I love that. Awesome. And in terms like you obviously started, you went into the startup space, you started your own company. Now you're a managing partner. What made you decide that like stopping of being in the C-suite and then starting getting more into advising?
It's a good question. Well, anyone who's listening who's been in the startup world knows that it can be all consuming. And I've had my head down in the startup world for a long time while
Mhm.
raising a family. And I got to a point where my youngest was entering her last year of high school. And there was a natural sort of breaking point in the company I was with, had a shorter runway. And I thought it was a good opportunity to take a pause from the intense, exciting but intense world of startups. And
Mhm.
I had really intended on just taking the year and being present with my daughter as she applied to colleges and whatnot. And then the advising sort of grew up organically. I had some incoming requests, and I said, "Look, I'm not really interested in joining anywhere, but I'll do some advising." And I
Mhm.
found that I really enjoyed it, and I like making connections for people, right? And so when you think about the space and you think about how siloed, so for example, just take mobility and utility, two industries that historically have been very separate,
Yeah.
and especially in automotive, and now are coming together in really interesting and new ways. And so advising a number of different companies and a number of different investors in this space allows me to make those connections for people, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
How long have you been a managing partner for?
I started Climate Tech Strategy Advisors. Well, it sort of got a facelift about a year ago. I've been doing advising and consulting on my
Mhm.
own for a number of industries, especially on the tech side of it, for over a decade. You know, even as I've
Yeah.
grown up tech companies and worked otherwhere, I've always done some amount of consulting. When I decided to do this full time, Climate Tech Strategy Advisors got a
Mhm.
bit of a facelift and really started focusing in on um, tying those industries together and thinking through
Mhm.
things like AI, right? So AI is something that's going to impact every part of society, but certainly every part of this climate tech space. And so focusing on that and on strategy has been, like I
Yeah.
said, it's been refreshing to do that work for a while.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love that. And obviously, you're talking about AI. AI have that thought of like being scary, and everyone thinks about it and just feels like AI is going to control our whole world in the future. Do you think that AI will be better than humans in the climate tech and EV space?
Do I think that?
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. I wouldn't phrase it quite that way. I would say that AI is going to be an important tool and an important asset
Mhm.
as we think through the decarbonization of the utility grid and the electrification of buildings and homes and mobility. And so
Yeah.
I'm not a big movie watcher, so maybe I'm not as scared by AI as others because I don't watch that stuff. Uh, look, whenever something's new and uncertain, it can leave you a little nervous. It can leave people a little nervous, the unknown.
Yeah.
There's so much potential with AI, but there's nothing, everything's a balance. There's also some challenges. There's challenges
Yeah.
around data security. There's challenges around identity theft, around jobs and the jobs that might be fewer in some
Mhm.
areas that AI can do, but invariably there'll be other areas where jobs will be created because of AI. And
Mhm.
so it's about, I guess it's not scary. You know, information is power, right? So knowledge is power. So it's the more you understand the ability to implement AI in a way that is useful to society and especially useful in solving the climate crisis, right? So we
Yeah.
have big challenges ahead. And when you think about the climate crisis, climate is an energy crisis. 75% of
Mhm.
all greenhouse gases um, come from energy that we use in generating electricity, use in powering our vehicles and our homes and our buildings. And
Mhm.
so, if we're really going to solve that, all of a sudden we go from these very separate areas to this very integrated network. And uh, one thing that AI is really good at is making decisions and helping us sort through very complex problems, right? And that
Yeah.
I think is going to be
Mhm.
something that's going to help us get further quicker. And look, time is of the essence. We have to solve these big problems.
No, absolutely. And how do you see, obviously, you've been advising for a very long time. How do you see investors supporting or investing in female founded companies?
Oh, that's not the question. I thought you were going to ask the AI question, but sure, I'd
Oh,
love to answer
yeah.
the female question.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, look, it's exciting to see so many female founders and female funders come
Yeah.
grow into the space. I was in New York City a couple weeks ago at Climate Week, and I went to
Mhm.
an event called Female Founders and Funders lunch down in Union Square, and I got there a little early, and outside the building was a line of women wrapped around the building of all ages, you know, older than
Yeah.
me, many younger than me, and seeing all of these female founders and funders come together. For me, it was just such a great moment because it showed how
Mhm.
far we've come, right? When I first
Yeah.
started out, there wasn't nearly as many as one,
Mhm.
and two, there wasn't the sort of networking and support, women
Mhm.
supporting women, so overtly, so intentionally, and I think that alone has made a really big impact. And I think that investors are looking for
Mhm.
um, good places to invest, good people to invest in. And I think it's a
Yeah.
matter of just creating those opportunities for women so that they can get out in front of investors, that they can pitch their ideas, that they can grow their companies, and in particular, that they can grow through a seed stage up through A, B, and into a profitable exit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yes, I did have actually the question about how you see the investors seeing the AI space. I just accidentally mixed them together. But how do you see investors seeing that space?
Yeah, so this is a big part of the work I do. I get asked all the time by investors around AI, and
Mhm.
I think that there's and for a long time AI was this buzzword early days,
Yeah.
and there was this idea that everybody and their cousin said they have an AI solution, but if you peeled back the curtain a little bit, it could be anything from a really full blown solution to a spreadsheet maybe with an equation in it, right? And um, so investors want to know, like, is this the real deal or is this sort of AI washing?
Mhm.
And so one of the things I do is help look through a company, and there's ways you can understand whether a company has a true scalable AI platform. And what I mean by that is that a, who are the people on the team? How much has the company invested um, in growing an AI team? And then two
Yeah.
is how much has that AI really been incorporated into their final product? Is it over here a sort of a nice research project, or is it really
Yeah.
incorporated into their product and their roadmap? And then the third pillar is around its ability to scale. And so scaling is
Mhm.
a really important concept in any startup, in investing, and that can be true on both the tech side and on the business side. So you can prove out a concept, you can be the first of anybody to do something, or you can get
Yeah.
a couple projects in the ground and be able to get that first series A or seed funding. but really the trick is, can you scale, right? Can you go from doing one charging station or one home, battery microgrid to being able to apply a product that can go coast to coast, that can really do thousands of homes or millions of vehicles. And AI is the same way, is that you might have AI proof of concept, but have you built it into a platform that can scale? And that has a whole bunch of implications that, we can get into the weeds if you want to, Mo, but I don't know if you want to go there. But anyway, point being, zooming back up, is that investors are very interested in how are you as a startup using AI, and how does that distinguish you in the market, or how does that position you to be a key problem solver in whatever market you're in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you think that, like, how do you see AI moving forward in the next 5, 10 years?
Fast. It's amazing. It really is
Yeah.
amazing. I graduated college. I was electrical engineering school, and when I was in college, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but the internet had just started to a point where I could email other engineering students through a DOS prompt. And I can remember my senior year in college, I was in Boulder, Colorado, and I went to a restaurant, and there on the table was at a brew pub, there was like one of those little things that are on the table with their specials, and it had a URL at the bottom, a www. And I was like, oh, wow, and to go from that moment, how quickly, everybody had a computer, everybody had web access, the whole world, things like brick and mortar stores to online shopping, the music industry, every facet of our life changed, and you take that, and I would say AI is going to be that plus so much more, right? So
Yeah.
that shift that I experienced, and people my age experience going pre and post internet, now we're in this place of pre and post AI. And I think in the next 5 years, already in the last 2 years, we've seen such a shift. I use AI in my work every single day. My clients use it in their work. My clients are looking at things like their org structure, their product, their capabilities. And that's, I think that's probably true in most industries currently. And we're going to see that just grow exponentially. So look, is it scary? Yeah, I mean, any change is scary. It's also exciting, and we have to be really mindful about how we grow, how we incorporate these tools, and they are tools, into our society, and how we think about, obviously economic growth, but things like equity, things like fairness, things like security and privacy. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And obviously, you have been through the space for a very long time. How do you see, or what has been some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in the space as a woman in leadership?
Yeah. Look, being in tech, and it's not just tech. I mean, it's not just the kind of tech I'm in. It's not,
Yeah.
it's finance. There's a whole bunch of areas where women have historically been underrepresented. And a lot of that, for me, at least in tech, comes from there's fewer women to start. There's fewer women graduating from engineering schools and growing into the business. So I think one of the challenges has been this need to prove yourself again and again, right? I think a lot of women, myself included, kind of put their head down and work and try to, do the best for the company, for the end product as possible, which is great and which everybody should do. But it also takes looking up and being able to advocate for yourself. And I think that a lot of us I'll speak for myself, aren't great at advocating. Maybe you weren't raised that way to advocate. A lot of times it's not seen as the right thing for women to do. And I think learning how to advocate for yourself and realizing that while yes, you do have to prove yourself again and again, it's okay to acknowledge, like, I do have skills, and it's okay to share those skills. And that's not bragging or boastful. It's just a matter of fact, and not being shy to do that. So, I mean, look, there's a lot of things about getting old that's not so fun, But this is one area where it's nice that the older you get, um, the more you can start to realize that you have learned a breadth of knowledge in this space, and
Mhm.
people want those opinions in order to move the needle forward in what's very nascent still, which is this climate tech space.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you've been in the C-suite, you've been an advisor right now. How do you, that all comes with a lot of stress. And how do you usually manage to just log off, like take your time away from stress and just enjoy life without work?
You're assuming I do, right? No, I'm kidding. I do.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do. um, and I've gotten better at it. Certainly, I mean, I'm somebody. I don't drink coffee because somebody who's wired like me just shouldn't have coffee because I'm already wired. Um, so the idea of just learning how to chill is not sort of in my DNA, but it's something that's super
Mhm.
important. And I'd have to say that in my sort of earlier career, especially as I was raising a family, there's this feeling of having to do it all, right? You know, wife, mother, executive, head of the PTA, though, all, all of it. And I think that that's a pressure a lot of women feel. And how do you um, find time for yourself, but also give yourself the permission to find time for yourself, right?
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
you do so much for everyone else, and how do you make time for yourself? And something that I probably wasn't great at, especially in my startup days when it's just 150 miles an hour all the time.
Yeah.
But for me, I love to run, and so it's my going off running or going off hiking. Right now, I have a bad leg, so I'm hiking more than running.
Mhm.
Being outside, being in nature, and just um, intentionally disconnecting. And it's a practice, right? It's a practice
Yeah.
of you start getting all this stuff in your head, and then you go, nope, like this is my time. This is when I'm not going to think about those emails I need
Mhm.
to get out, or that pitch I need to do. But look, life's a practice, right? And
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I get to keep practicing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
saw a comment from Cassie about
Mhm.
if there is, and feel free to answer it, but are there specific skills that you would recommend the next generation of women leaders starting buildings in AI, as well as like how can we get better at spotlighting our skills in a way that makes us stand out in a competitive landscape?
Yes, great question, Cassie. So, so this is one that's near and dear to me because I've hired a lot of people and I've interviewed a lot of people, and I know there's been books written about this and data supporting this.
Yeah.
Uh, Women tend not to, and the data shows, I can't quote where, but women tend to apply for jobs that they have all of the skills for. Um, so,
Mhm.
so whereas men tend to apply for jobs that they think they could do, that's somewhat aspirational. And I spend a lot of time mentoring women in, hey, you can do all of these things. You should be applying for this next opportunity instead of checking the box. And so I think what I would say to young women in industry right now is uh, like work on your resume, make sure you're spending time networking and connecting with people, but don't be afraid to go after
Mhm.
something new, right? Because if if I'm hiring somebody, what's important to me is somebody who is a go-getter, who's a multitasker. For example, my dad owned a diner growing up, and I waited tables all through high school and then college. And whenever I see somebody who has um, uh, hospitality table, like a waiter or waitress on their resume, they tend to go to the top of the pile for me, right? No matter if I'm hiring
Yeah.
for a software developer or a product manager or someone in marketing, it's because I know that person knows how to deal with people. They know how to multitask.
Mhm.
They know how to think on their feet, right? And so don't underestimate those soft skills, um, which I think
Yeah.
are very important skills, and uh, and advocate for yourself and go after those aspirational jobs. So that's what
Absolutely.
I would say. Yeah.
No,
And
absolutely. I love that. Oh, you go. Sorry.
I just say one more thing is, and don't be afraid of being wrong. I spent a lot of my early career thinking, waiting till I was 300% sure before I'd open my mouth because it was so
Mhm.
mortifying to get it wrong. And there's this feeling, whether it's real or imagined, that if you get it wrong as a woman, sort of you go to the back of the line,
Yeah,
and that's just, it doesn't have to be that way, right? Like, you get it
absolutely.
wrong, you say I was wrong, and you correct yourself, right? Like, you show that tenacity to keep going. So I think a lot of us, and I see, I've also been a university professor, and I see a lot of women don't
Mhm.
raise their hands for fear of being wrong. And like, getting things wrong is just practice for getting it right, right? Like, so
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what's like, with that being said, I love the advice that you just gave, but what's the best advice that you received during your career?
Hmm. A lot of good advice. I've had a lot of really great mentors over my career, which I'm very grateful for. Um,
Uh,
I'd say it's hard to pick just one. I'd say the things that stuck with me the most is um, not to be so hard on yourself, right?
mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
again, back to like, people make mistakes, and that's okay, you know. So not to be so hard on yourself, and um, not to overthink it too much, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes your gut or your first instinct um, is the right one. It's not that you shouldn't be able to like acknowledge when it's not, and you need to do the work to fill around the edges to get to a complete decision. But um, sometimes we have a tendency to overthink things or be too worried about how those will play out to others, right? Whether it's a
Mhm.
wider
Yeah.
audience, whether it's an investor, whether it's a boss, or even it's your team. And if you spend too much time in your head worrying about what everyone else um, is going to react to that, sometimes you lose some of your best ideas and momentum. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
And what would be, just a fun question away from AI? What's that one meal that can eat for the rest of your life? What would it be and why?
Wow.
That's actually harder than any AI question.
Can we talk about AI? It's so much easier. Um, let's see. Am I like on an island, or can I be anywhere?
Anywhere.
All right. I guess I would say burrito bowl. How's that? So a burrito bowl that's like, so then you have like the salad on the bottom, and then you have all the different mixings. And I don't do gluten, so something sort of salad, rice, goulash sounds pretty good to me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that actually
that
sounds very delicious.
that's what I would say. Yeah.
I love that. And lastly, as we're coming towards an end, how can people reach out to you if they are looking for an advisor in the climate tech or just have a conversation with you as well as an advisor?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. I don't know if my email is included in this chat, but it's anna@climatetechstrategy.com. Um, Feel free to reach out to me there as well. And yeah, I tend to try to get to some of the shows each year. So if you're in the climate tech space and you go to any of these shows, you'll probably see me there. Most of the big ones like Distributech and RE Plus. Yeah. And every
Awesome.
now and again, Mo promised me that if I got to New York City, he'd take me for lunch in Hell's Kitchen. So that's
Yeah,
another stop
in
on my.
November we'll be in Hell's Kitchen, so we'll find you there.
All right. Deal. Sounds good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much, Anna, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, and I really can't wait for our time in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah. Thanks so much. It's nice talking to you.
Of course, you too. Well, thank you so much for everyone also who has nominated a colleague, friend, or a leader for our Women in Tech report last month. The report are just being finalized and will be launched on Tuesday, the 29th of November, which is so exciting. And just under 2 weeks, we've had so many amazing women nominated, and we're so excited to be sharing this with you. So make sure to follow our Parity LinkedIn page for any updates, and see you next month. Have a great day.